was wondering if you're familiar with Anne Heche and a movie called Toxic Skies.
I'm certainly familiar with Anne Heche from Volcano and a bunch of other things, and from Wag the Dog. She was great in Wag the Dog, but Toxic Skies, I'm not sure I'm familiar with that one.
Toxic Skies had to do with chemtrails and
okay.
And
this
booming.
hang on. This is
I just wanted to.
No, I'm not. No, we don't do chemtrails on this show. Okay, we don't do chemtrails on this show. Right now, we know that Cass Sunstein and even the Israeli government and now Wall Street and all the money junkies are desperate to try and find some way to discredit the alternative media so that the gullible American public will go back to the corporate media and be fascinated by Britney Spears' new bikini body, even though it's photoshopped, and Tom Cruise's latest marital woes. And we know that Cass Sunstein and the U.S. government, the FBI, are always putting all kinds of nonsensical things out there with which the corporate media can ridicule the alternative media. Like HARP up in Alaska being some kind of a weather-changing weapon. Or I'll give you a really good example. 2 examples out of history so people don't feel personally affronted by it. When Jim Garrison had Clay Shaw on trial for the conspiracy to murder President John F. Kennedy, the CIA got a bogus witness in on Jim Garrison, who fooled everybody until he was on the stand. You know, claimed he saw Clay Shaw and Lee Harvey Oswald together, which a lot of people had done that, but they put this witness on the stand. Once he was on the stand, he just sort of volunteered the information that every night he fingerprinted his own daughter to make sure they were not planting a substitute on him. And, of course, that one bogus witness completely destroyed Jim Garrison's case. And Clay Shaw was acquitted of being party to the John F. Kennedy assassination, whereupon he died almost immediately of a mysterious heart attack. During the House Select Committee on Assassinations, they made a big deal about the umbrella that had been opened along the JFK parade route. And somebody came in and said, there was a poison dart gun in there. And they got the actual umbrella in, and they opened it up and said, don't point that thing at me. And just generally made a great deal of fun that anybody who thought there was a conspiracy to assassinate John F. Kennedy just had to be a real loon. And, of course, because of the acoustic data, the House Select Committee on Assassinations had to admit that, yeah, there was at least one other shooter. Now, of course, we actually have photos of them and everything like that. More recently, when the U.S. government was forced to hold hearings into the abuses of the BATF, because after they got their law enforcement powers and guns and cool little blue jackets, they made a lot of really bad mistakes. There was Ruby Ridge, there was kicking down the wrong doors and shooting homeowners who were trying to defend their homes against what they thought was an armed invasion. There was, of course, this utter debacle over at that church in Waco, Texas. And so Congress had to hold hearings on just why the BATF was having all these problems. And in the middle of it, this guy walks in full military camos, announces he's part of the militia movement, and demands the government declassify their tornado making machine. And he was another plant by the government to discredit this whole idea of questioning the BATF. This is called poisoning the well. It's an old propaganda tactic. The U.S. government has been doing it forever. Okay, back when there was this whole story about George W. Bush's being AWOL for military service, and CBS had all these documents that documented where he'd actually gone, somebody got one bogus document in on him that could be used to discredit the rest. That's called poisoning the well. So, knowing that the alternative media is under constant attack by the federal government of the United States, by the government of Israel, by the money junkies, by the Federal Reserve, we have to be very, very careful about the stories we allow on the air or onto our website. And stories we know to be bogus are all these claims about flying saucers being kept captive out at Area 51, Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster's love child, Elvis still being alive, chemtrails, HARP, various other things like that. They are planted stories, deliberately planted stories, so the corporate media's got something to ridicule the issue with, so they don't have to answer questions they don't want to answer. Another one from recent memory, this whole nonsensical idea that there was no plane at the Pentagon. In fact, that's even grown. Now they're trying to say the planes that we're seeing crashing into the World Trade Towers were holographic projections and all this other kind of nonsensical stuff. Remember, when you're dealing with a corrupted government, and especially with a corrupted banking system, the other side loves to play dirty. They see it as part of their power. They expect you to be honest and honorable and fair and logical and rational, which means as long as they're willing to go out, lie, cheat, steal, and kill, that they will have the upper hand. It's not working because we understand the other side likes to play dirty. And that is why there are certain topics I will not allow on this show. Because coming from a scientific background myself, I have looked at these issues of things like no plane at the Pentagon, HARP, chemtrails, and I recognize these are just completely made-up nonsensical stories that are being used to try and poison the well of a very serious discussion of government abuse, malfeasance, the predations of the Federal Reserve, the corruption of Wall Street. And that is what this show is all about. So apologies to anybody whose feelings got hurt. But there are, in fact, subjects that we don't cover on this show. There are plenty of other radio shows where these are valid topics. And I encourage you to tune into those shows if these are things you want to hear about, or call into those shows if these are things that you want to talk about. But here we're trying to head off a world war and to shut down a pyramid scheme banking system that has pretty much ruined the Western world. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.